Welcome, deep divers, to another journey into the heart of what makes information truly tick. Have you ever felt like writing a research paper is like trying to navigate this really complex, often confusing labyrinth?
Oh, definitely.
You've put in the hard work, gathered your data, formulated what you think are like watertight arguments, but then comes that moment of truth.
Mm.
How do you actually weave all of that together?
Yeah. How do you make it coherent? Make it impactful?
Exactly, into a piece of academic writing that not only informs but really resonates with your audience? Or maybe, as a reader, you sometimes just wish you had X-ray vision to quickly get the main point of a paper.
It's a universal challenge, isn't it? I mean, whether you're crafting your own arguments or just trying to efficiently pull out the core insights from someone else's work.
Right.
Academic communication, well, it has its own nuanced language, its own structure. And understanding it isn't just about grammar. It's really about decoding meaning, figuring out credibility, and spotting where the real breakthroughs are hiding.
And that's pretty much our mission today. This deep dive, it isn't just for those of you writing papers, it's really for anyone who reads them.
That's a great point.
Because by understanding the blueprints behind academic writing, you'll gain this kind of superpower, right? The ability to instantly decode papers, grasp their true intent, and pull out insights with way more precision. It makes you a truly well-informed deep diver. Our guide for this journey is the incredibly insightful book, Academic Writing for Graduate Students, and we're specifically zooming in on the foundational blueprints laid out in Unit 8.
Unit 8 is fantastic for this. It really pulls back the curtain on the, let's say, the overarching structure of a research paper. It highlights those common organizational patterns, the rhetorical moves that are designed to make your work not just understood, but genuinely convincing.
Okay.
This is all about making sure your voice is heard effectively, professionally, within that bigger academic conversation. And on the flip side, it equips you to understand all those subtle signals in every paper you pick up.
So let's start right at the beginning then. In academic writing, the introduction, it's often anything but easy, right?
Right. It feels like it should be simple, but...
Yeah. The Greek philosopher Plato, he famously said, the beginning is half of the whole, and that wisdom just absolutely rings true for research papers. It's often where writers face their first major battle-hard one, just trying to get those opening sentences perfect.
That's a perfect way to put it, battle-hard one.
Yeah.
Because unlike shorter things, more informal stuff like an email or a quick memo,
Sure.
research paper introductions are uniquely challenging. They have to achieve multiple critical things all at the same time.
Okay.
They're doing some really heavy lifting right from the start.
Yeah.
Setting the stage, bringing the reader into a specific intellectual space, and crucially, establishing the reason for the entire study.
So it's foundational.
Absolutely. So for you, the listener, whether you're writing or just trying to quickly get the gist of a paper, understanding this multifaceted role of the introduction is just key. It sets the foundation for everything that follows.
That feeling of staring at the blank page, it can be paralyzing. It's like trying to fold a fitted sheet perfectly, what it should look like. But getting there is a whole other story.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Thankfully, there seems to be a widely recognized framework to help us out here. It's called the CARS model. C-A-R-S.
Yes, the CARS model. It stands for Creating a Research Space. Developed by John Swales, it's a brilliant blueprint for introductions. And it's particularly helpful because it's based on tons of analysis of actual published papers. It's not just theory.
Okay, practical.
Very practical. Think of it like building a house, as our source suggests. First, you establish the general land area where your house will be built. That's your broad field of inquiry.
Got it. The neighborhood.
Exactly, the neighborhood. Then you define your specific plot within that area, marking out precisely where your unique structure will stand, your little piece of land. And finally, you actually construct your unique structure on that plot, laying out what your study actually does. Each of these steps corresponds to one of the 3 core moves in the CARS model.
Okay, that analogy really helps visualize it. So with that foundational understanding of our academic land and plot, let's unpack the first step. Move 1. Establishing a territory. And the source says this one is obligatory.
Yes, obligatory, meaning you absolutely have to do it. You can't really skip this.
So what's the main purpose here? And why is it so non-negotiable? Why can't you just jump into your specific thing?
Well, the primary purpose of Move 1 is to introduce the general topic of your research and, really importantly, to demonstrate its importance or centrality within your field. You need to make the reader instinctively feel, yes, okay, this topic matters, this is relevant, I should keep reading.
Ah, okay. Hook them in.
Exactly. It's non-negotiable because if the reader doesn't quickly grasp why your topic is important, why should they bother proceeding? They've got a million other things to read.
Fair point.
So one key strategy for this is claiming centrality. Authors often use phrases that signal widespread interest or importance. Things like has been extensively studied, or there has been growing interest in, maybe recent studies have focused on.
Right, you see those phrases all the time.
You do. For instance, in one of the source papers, the concept of energy harvesting from ocean waves is introduced as among the most urgent today.
Mm-hmm.
That immediately highlights its crucial evaluation as an alternative to conventional techniques. It tells the reader straight up, hey, this is a significant, active area of research and you should care about it.
So it's about making this broad, compelling statement that gets the reader nodding along, almost like an implicit, welcome to this neighborhood of knowledge I'm talking about.
Precisely.
And what about the second strategy, making topic generalizations? How does that fit into establishing the territory?
That's another really effective strategy within Move 1. It involves providing these broad, foundational statements about the field, just to ground your reader, give them a mental map of the intellectual landscape before you zoom in.
Okay.
A good example from our source is the paper on Thomas Eakins. It introduces Eakins simply as one of the greatest American painters.
Right, straightforward.
It's a general, widely accepted statement. It sets the stage for a more specific discussion about his work, maybe his painting techniques or his legacy. It signals, look, we're talking about something foundational here.
Got it. And then the big one, I suppose, within Move 1 is reviewing previous research, the literature review part of the intro. Why do authors do this? Is it just like showing off what they've read? Or is there a deeper strategic game for the reader?
Oh, it's much deeper than showing off, although demonstrating familiarity is certainly part of it.
Okay.
There are multiple really important motives for citing previous work. It's about acknowledging the intellectual property of earlier authors, giving credit where it's due. It shows respect for previous scholars. And very importantly, it makes connections between your work and theirs. It provides evidence for the claims you're starting to make. It helps identify gaps in the existing research, which is crucial for the next move.
Sets up Move 2.
Exactly. It positions your own work within that ongoing academic conversation. And yes, it demonstrates your familiarity with the field. It's a multifaceted rhetorical move. It basically signals to the reader, look, I know the conversation that's happening in the space, and I'm ready to contribute meaningfully.
Okay. But this sounds like it could be a minefield of, like, verb tense choices. Are there specific citation patterns or tenses we should look out for, especially for us as readers trying to figure out the author's stance or the status of the info?
You've absolutely hit on a fascinating nuance here. The source details 3 common citation patterns with distinct tense usages. And yeah, understanding these is kind of like getting X-ray vision for reading research papers.
Okay, give us the X-ray specs.
All right, so pattern 1 refers to single studies, and it typically uses the past tense. For instance, Rogers, 2004, concluded that business failure may be related to reduced working capital. See. The focus is on what specific researchers did in a study that's completed, often seen as historical.
Okay, finish action.
Finished action. As a reader, that signals a specific past finding. Now, pattern 2 refers more broadly to areas of inquiry, and it often uses the present perfect tense. An example would be, several researchers have studied the causes of airport delays.
Have studied.
Right. This emphasizes that the research area has been explored up to the present moment. It indicates an ongoing conversation or a body of work that continues to be relevant today.
Still active.
Still active, exactly. And finally, pattern 3 refers to the state of current knowledge, and this uses the simple present tense. So the causes of airport delays are complex, or maybe airport delays appear to have a complex set of causes.
Are complex. Present.
Present. This focuses on what is currently known or widely accepted in the field. It often reflects a consensus or maybe a foundational truth that the author is building upon.
That's a great breakdown. So the tense choice isn't just random grammar. It subtly signals how the author views maybe the proximity of that cited work to their own opinion or to the current understanding.
That's exactly it. The movement, often from past to present, perfect, and then to present, can subtly indicate that the research being reported is getting increasingly close to the writer's own viewpoint, or their own research, or just the current accepted state of knowledge in the field.
Okay, so for me as a reader, what's the real nugget here? How does recognizing this help me be more well-informed? What's the power move?
That's the key question, right? The takeaway isn't just grammar. It's about understanding the author's stance and confidence. A subtle tense shift can tell you whether the author is just reporting history, summarizing ongoing debates, or boldly stating something they believe is a current truth they stand behind.
Like a hidden signal.
It really is. It helps you instantly gauge the sort of shelf life and the certainty level of the information being presented just by looking at the verb tense. It's quite powerful once you start noticing it.
Wow.
And it's worth quickly mentioning the citational present, as the source calls it. That's used for really famous or important sources, like Aristotle argues that, or Confucius says.
Their ideas live on.
Exactly. It's not about what they did back then, but about their ideas having enduring relevance now. So recognizing all these patterns as you read, it just gives you much deeper insight into the author's perspective and the status of the information. It's all part of bringing the reader into your academic neighborhood, showing them a landscape where your work fits.
Okay, that makes sense. So once we've established our territory, laid out the intellectual landscape of our neighborhood, we need to move to establishing a niche. Also obligatory, the source says.
Also obligatory, crucial move.
This sounds like where we stake our claim, right? Identifying the specific plot of land for our academic house within that neighborhood. But what happens if you don't establish a clear niche? What's the immediate consequence for the paper and maybe for the reader's experience?
That's a critical point. If you don't establish a clear niche, your paper can just feel, well, pointless, superfluous.
Okay. Harsh, but okay.
It sounds harsh, but a reader will quickly ask, so what? Why are they telling me this? What's actually new here? And you'll lose their attention because you haven't justified why your study even exists.
Right.
This move two, is where you identify a gap, maybe a limitation in previous work, a controversy, or an unanswered question in the existing research. It's the pivotal move where you justify why your study is needed and why it matters in the bigger academic conversation.
So we're essentially saying, okay, here's what everyone else has done, but here's what's missing. Or maybe here's where I can add something genuinely new or different.
Exactly. That but is often key.
How do you do that without sounding, I don't know, overly aggressive or dismissive of all that previous work you just reviewed?
That's a really important consideration. Tone matters. A very common and generally well-accepted strategy is simply indicating a gap, pointing out factually what has not been studied or fully understood. For instance, in one of the papers mentioned in our source, the Marsh Pictures paper, the author states, apart from a chapter in Foster, 1997, this series has been little discussed by critics or art historians. See, that immediately flags a clear, objective gap in the literature. No aggression there.
Just stating a fact.
Just stating a fact. Other strategies include counterclaiming, where you respectfully challenge existing views, maybe by presenting new evidence or offering a different interpretation, or question raising, where you pose specific research questions that the existing literature hasn't tackled. And in some fields, particularly, say, sciences and engineering, research groups might opt for continuing a tradition. This isn't really finding a gap, but it's justifying the work by saying they're expanding on their own previous work or their group's work.
Yeah.
Like adding another brick to the wall of knowledge, as the source puts it. It's a deliberate extension.
Building on established work.
Right. The key, no matter the strategy, is to be clear about your contribution, but, not arrogant.
I can imagine this move often involves using some negative-sounding language, right, to point out what's missing or what's problematic in the existing stuff.
You're right. It often does.
How does a writer manage that tone effectively? And for us readers, what are the little language signals we should look for that tell us an author is subtly carving out their space?
You're right to focus on language. Move 2 often employs what we might call negative adjectives and verbs, words that signal limitations or gaps. Things like lacked, limited, problematic, unclear, insufficient. Or connecting words like however, nevertheless, although. These are all flags.
Okay, the but words.
The but words, exactly.
Right.
However, there's a crucial nuance here. Academic writers are typically quite cautious. You rarely see a really strong negative like, no studies have ever been done on this.
Right, that feels risky.
It is risky and often untrue. Instead, you'll see more tempered, cautious phrasing. Something like, to the best of our knowledge, no studies. Or maybe a few studies have explored, or while research exists, it is largely overlooked.
Hedging their bets a bit.
Precisely. And this isn't just about being polite. It actually demonstrates critical thinking. It shows you're engaging deeply and responsibly with the literature, acknowledging your own limitations, and claiming there's a complete void.
Okay.
As a reader, when you see these kinds of phrases, the cautious negatives, the howevers, It's a strong signal that the author is about to pivot. They're about to present their own unique contribution, justified by the weakness or gap they've just identified in prior work. This move is all about carving out your specific plot within that academic neighborhood you introduced back in Move 1.
All right, makes sense. We've established the territory, Move 1. We've carefully carved out our niche, Move 2, so now it's finally time for Move 3. Occupying the niche, this is where we actually get to the core of our own research, right? The construction of our specific academic house.
Exactly. Time to build.
What's the main purpose of this final obligatory move in the introduction?
This is where you explicitly state the precise aims, the purposes, or maybe the hypotheses of your current research. It's where you articulate exactly how your study will address the gap you identified, or how it will build upon the tradition you established in Move 2.
Okay.
It's essentially moving from, here's what's missing or needs extending, to, and here's precisely what I am doing about it in this paper. It's your commitment statement to the reader, telling them exactly what to expect in the pages that follow.
So what kind of language signals this occupation? Are there common phrases or sentence structures that writers typically use to deliver this commitment clearly?
Absolutely. There are some very common and recognizable phrases, things like, the aim of this paper is to, or this study investigates. Maybe the present work extends the use of. These are very direct.
Very clear.
Very clear. The tense here is interesting too. To is very common in many fields. It implies relevance and freshness, almost like the paper is actively doing this right now as you read it.
Right. It feels current.
It does. In some fields, though, like maybe biomedical research, you might see was to. The aim of this study was to. This often refers back to the original aim when the research was actually conducted, acknowledging that the paper itself is the report or the outcome of that past aim.
Subtle difference.
Subtle, but it reflects disciplinary conventions.
Yeah.
Beyond just stating the purpose, authors might also list their specific research questions or hypotheses here. And in some fields, engineering comes to mind from the source. Authors might even briefly preview their principal findings.
Really? Give away the ending.
Well, sort of a mini spoiler. It's becoming more common, sometimes influenced by publisher requirements for things like highlights or graphical abstracts. Those little summaries designed for quick online scanning. It gives the reader a taste of the main results up front.
Interesting. And you also mentioned stating the value of the research. Is that part of this move too? It sounds a little bit like, I don't know, self-promotion, which can sometimes feel a bit awkward in academic writing.
It is part of this move. And yes, it can be seen as a subtle but important form of promotion, especially in today's, very competitive publishing environment where getting your work noticed is key.
True.
This is where you briefly explain the contribution or the significance of your work. It's generally not about grandstanding or making huge claims, but about clearly articulating the utility or the novelty of your findings. What makes this paper worth reading?
Okay.
For example, in that soft capacitors paper, the authors state, this paper presents novel designs for wave energy harvesting systems based on soft capacitors. That directly communicates the novelty of their work. It tells the reader what makes this study unique and why they should invest their time in reading it. So this final move, Move 3, is where you truly start building your unique academic structure on the plot you've cleared, setting the stage for the detailed methods and results to come.
Okay, that CARS model territory niche occupation makes a lot of sense for structuring that crucial intro. So if we step back now and think about the whole paper, what does the overall shape look like? Our source has this great visual, figure 14, describing it as a broad, narrow, broad, or maybe general, specific general movement.
Yeah.
Can you help us connect this back to our academic house analogy?
Yeah, that's a perfect lens for understanding the typical flow of a research paper. The introduction, as we've just spent a lot of time on, is exactly where you go from general to specific. You follow that CARS model.
Right.
You start with a broad academic neighborhood, Move 1, then you narrow down to your specific plot, Move 2, and finally you lay the foundation for your unique house, your specific question, aim, or hypothesis, Move 3, general to specific.
Okay. And then the middle sections, the methods and results.
Those sections, methods and results, form the highly specific and concrete inner reams of the paper. This is where you get into the nitty-gritty details about what you actually did, the methodology and what you found, the data, the observations. It's the most specific, narrow part, the detailed description of the construction and the outcomes inside your house.
And then the paper widens out again in the discussion section, right? It's like we're moving from those really detailed rooms back out to look at the house in the context of the neighborhood again.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. The discussion section moves from interpreting your specific results, what happened in your house, back to their broader implications. How does this relate to the rest of the neighborhood? You connect your findings back to the wider field, back to the literature you mentioned in the introduction. Specific back to general.
So it creates this nice symmetrical shape.
It does. This general-specific general flow creates a cohesive and logical narrative for the research. It tells a story that moves smoothly from the big picture down into the granular details and then zooms back out to the big picture of what it all means.
And our source also flags some really fascinating patterns in things like tense, voice, and other language features across these different sections. Table 18, I think. Expert, if you had to kind of boil it down for our listeners, what's the big picture takeaway here? What's the underlying reason these patterns exist across sections? And how does understanding them give us, deeper insight into what the paper's trying to do?
That's a fantastic question, because these patterns aren't just arbitrary rules somebody made up. They serve distinct rhetorical purposes.
Ah,
They help signal the function of each section.
okay.
For instance, think about tense. The present tense is used a lot in the introduction and the discussion, but much less in methods and results. Why?
Relevance.
Exactly. The introduction sets up a current problem or state of knowledge. This is an issue. The discussion interprets findings in terms of current implications and future research. This suggests. All about ongoing relevance and connection to the present. Conversely, the past tense dominates the methods and results sections because you're describing completed actions and observations, what was done, we collected data, and what was found, the results showed. It's reporting on finished events.
Right. And what about the passive voice? I know that gets debated a lot in general writing on ICE, but Table 18 says it's actually high in the methods section. Why would that be?
Passive voice. It's a great example of language serving a specific rhetorical function in academic writing. In the methods section, the main focus is often on the action itself and the object of that action, not really on the researcher performing it.
Okay.
So, saying the samples were heated to 200 degrees emphasizes the procedure, the protocol, and crucially, its replicability. It suggests anyone following this method would do the same thing. It sounds more objective than we heated the samples.
It takes the we out of it.
Exactly. It de-emphasizes the actor, the researcher, to keep the focus squarely on the scientific process itself. It promotes a sense of objectivity. The idea is that the method is key, not necessarily who performed it.
That makes a lot of sense in that context. And what about citations? The table shows they're high in the intro and discussion, but low in methods and maybe variable in results. Why the difference there? Why aren't you citing in the methods?
Good question. It comes back to function. Citations are fundamentally about engaging with the broader academic conversation. In the introduction, you're using citations to show where your work fits within existing knowledge, building on or responding to others. Move 1.
Right, establishing the territory.
Precisely. In the discussion, you're using citations again, but this time to compare your findings to previous research, to explain agreements or disagreements, and to build broader arguments about implications.
Connecting back out.
Connecting back out. The methods and results sections, on the other hand, are primarily about presenting your specific procedures and your data. So they're naturally less reliant on external citations, unless maybe you're citing a specific established methodology or a statistical technique someone else developed.
Okay, and one last one from that table. Hedges. That cautious language things like may suggest, could be. The table says they're used moderately in the intro, but quite highly in the discussion. Why all the caution, especially when discussing your own findings? Shouldn't you be confident?
Hedges. They are an absolute hallmark of academic integrity and careful scholarship. It might seem counterintuitive, like a lack of confidence, but it's actually the opposite.
Really? How so?
Well, in the introduction, you might use hedges when making broad generalizations about a field research often focuses on, or when cautiously pointing out limitations in previous work previous studies may have overlooked.
Okay.
But in the discussion, you're interpreting your own findings, and scientific conclusions are very rarely 100% absolute or universally applicable, especially from a single study. Using hedges like suggests may indicate, it appears that, or this could imply, signals that you understand the limitations of your data, the specific context of your study, and that you're presenting a nuanced interpretation rather than an oversimplified, absolute certainty.
So it's about being precise and honest about the limits.
Exactly. It actually builds credibility because it shows you're a careful, critical thinker, not someone overstating their claims. It shows You're engaging in that reasonable speculation we'll talk about next, acknowledging possibilities without claiming definite proof.
So essentially, understanding these patterns, tense, voice, citations, hedges, it helps you not just write correctly according to some arbitrary rules, but actually to sound like a knowledgeable expert in your field simply by aligning with these expected disciplinary conventions.
Absolutely.
And for us, the readers, it's like a quick guide. It helps us understand the type of information being presented in each section. Is it background, method, result, interpretation? And also the author's stance towards that information. Are they reporting, arguing, speculating?
Precisely. It makes you a much more sophisticated reader.
All right, let's move past the introduction and those middle sections and dive into arguably one of the most challenging yet absolutely crucial parts of a research paper, the discussion section.
Definitely challenging for many.
Yeah. After all that hard work collecting data and carefully reporting the results, this is where you really get to tell the story of your findings, isn't it? This is where you put the furniture in your academic house and explain what it all means.
It truly is. The discussion section is where you give meaning to your findings. You interpret your results. You connect them back to the broader literature you introduced way back in the beginning. It's where you finally answer that critical "so what" question for your readers.
Right. Why should I care?
Exactly. But for many writers, it can feel overwhelming because you're moving beyond just objective reporting into the realm of interpretation, which can feel, I don't know, less concrete, maybe more subjective.
Yeah, a bit scarier.
A bit scarier.
Yeah.
The challenge, as our source points out, often lies in deciding exactly what to include and how much detail to provide, because the conventions can vary quite a bit across different disciplines. I've definitely seen students who were so afraid of this section, they just basically list their results again, maybe using slightly different words, but without any real interpretation.
Oh, that's frustrating as a reader.
It is. It's like getting a pile of ingredients for a fantastic meal, but absolutely no recipe or explanation of how they combine. You need to give the reader the full dish, the finished interpretation.
That's a really powerful analogy. And I remember the source also mentioned something intriguing called reasonable speculation. What's that about? And how does a writer balance that, daring to interpret with the academic need for solid evidence and rigor? Where's the line between reasonable speculation and just, making stuff up?
That's a fascinating and really vital point. Strong writers, according to the source material, actively engage in reasonable speculation about their findings. They dare to interpret, they explore possible implications, they suggest what their results might mean beyond just the raw data points.
Okay.
Weaker writers, on the other hand, might shy away from this. They might be afraid of being wrong, of overstepping the data.
Understandable fear.
Very understandable. But the line between reasonable speculation and just guessing lies in grounding your interpretations. You need to ground them firmly in your data, in existing theory that you've already discussed, and in sound logic. You're not just pulling ideas out of thin air.
Right.
You're essentially building plausible bridges between your specific findings and the broader academic conversation. For example, if your data shows, say, a correlation between two factors, reasonable speculation might involve suggesting potential causal mechanisms based on existing theories you've cited.
Okay.
While also clearly stating that, further research is needed to confirm causality. You're proposing plausible explanations or implications backed by what you've actually found, even if you can't definitively prove them within the scope of this one particular study.
So it's about suggesting possibilities carefully.
Yes, and embracing this reasonable speculation is actually a real opportunity. It allows you to position yourself as knowledgeable, as capable, showing that you can critically analyze and synthesize information, not just report it.
Okay, so it's actually a sign of strength when done right. How do we structure this critical section then? Is there a neat model like CARS for discussions, or is it generally more fluid and variable?
Well, it's not typically referred to with a catchy acronym like CARS, but the source does outline a pretty clear common structure. And interestingly, it often follows that familiar general-specific general movement again, but sort of in reverse compared to the intro.
Oh, interesting. How so?
It typically starts quite specific, focusing tightly on your findings, and then it gradually broadens out to discuss their more general implications and connections. The discussion section is generally organized into about 4 core moves, similar to the intro structure.
Okay, let's dive into those moves. What's the first move for a discussion section? Our first step in giving meaning to our academic house's contents.
The first move, which is often quite brief actually, is move 1, consolidating the research space. You can think of it as contextualizing the study again for the reader.
Reorienting them.
Exactly. Its purpose is to quickly reorient the reader by briefly reiterating the main purpose or the principal findings of your study, linking back to what you set out in the introduction. It's just a quick reminder of what the paper set out to achieve or what was broadly found. This is especially helpful if a reader, has jumped directly to the discussion section, which people sometimes do.
Guilty as charged sometimes.
We all do it. So, for example, a discussion section might open by briefly restating the core problem. Quote, "The corrosion-induced deterioration of highway bridges can have serious consequences," before then delving into the specifics of its study and how its findings relate to that problem. The opening strategies can vary a bit. Some authors might restate things quite extensively, while others might just jump straight into discussing their findings, assuming the reader remembers the intro.
Gotcha. And then after that brief reorientation, we get into the actual findings again. Let's move to reporting, summarizing findings. This sounds, again, a bit like the results section. What's the key difference here?
You're absolutely right to spot that potential overlap and question the distinction.
Yeah.
It's crucial. This move is about summarizing your principal results. And yes, it often recycles some information from the results section. But the key difference is the emphasis. Here, it's summary with interpretation, rather than just presenting raw data.
Ah, okay. Interpretation starts here.
Yes. Remember, the results section typically presents statements in the main text that summarize or explain what the data show. And those statements are directly supported by the data itself, the facts, the numbers, usually found in tables and figures.
Right. The evidence.
The evidence. Here, in the discussions move to, you interpret those results as you summarize them. You're not just saying X happened. You're starting to say X happened and this suggests Y, or this indicates Z.
Okay.
For instance, using that street crossing study example from the source, the result might be stated factually as participants were less likely to successfully cross the street when conversing on a cell phone than when they were listening to music. But in the discussion, summarizing this finding, you might add interpretation, which demonstrates the potential cognitive load imposed by mobile phone use, even in seemingly simple dynamic environments. See the shift?
Yeah, the demonstrates adds that layer of meaning.
Exactly. The verbs you choose here are really important signals. Suggests, indicates, reveals, demonstrates. These verbs clearly signal that you're moving beyond simple reporting into analysis and meaning-making, even as you summarize.
Okay, this really feels like the core of the discussion now, where the true insights start bubbling up. So after reporting and starting to interpret the findings in Move 2, what happens in Move 3? Commenting on findings. This sounds like where the furniture really starts to get arranged and explained in our academic house.
This is absolutely the heart of the discussion section, no doubt about it. Here, you delve much deeper into analyzing and interpreting your results, and critically, linking them back explicitly to the broader literature and the initial research questions or gaps you identified way back in the introduction. There are several key strategies or sub-moves within this larger move.
Okay, what are they?
First, a really common and important one is citing agreement or disagreement with previous studies. This isn't just dropping names again, it's an analytical comparison. You highlight specifically where your findings align with or perhaps diverge from existing published literature, and importantly, you try to explain why that might be the case.
So engaging with the conversation.
Actively engaging, yes. Showing you're participating in the ongoing academic dialogue, not just presenting your results in a vacuum. This shows critical thinking.
Okay, what else happens in Move 3?
Second, you need to explain unexpected outcomes or any results that seem contradictory, either internally or compared to previous work. This can actually be a goldmine for generating real insight, instead of just ignoring anomalies or sweeping them under the rug.
Which is tempting.
Very tempting. But strong writers confront them head on. They offer plausible explanations, maybe speculate on reasons, or acknowledge limitations in understanding why something unexpected happened. It demonstrates intellectual honesty and real analytical depth. For example, if your study tested a new teaching method and it didn't show the expected improvements compared to the control group, you'd discuss why that might have occurred. Maybe there were implementation issues, maybe confounding variables you didn't control for, perhaps even a flaw in the initial hypothesis driving the study.
Right, addressing the tricky bits.
Exactly. Third, you explicitly acknowledge the limitations of your own study. Again, this isn't a sign of weakness. It's crucial for intellectual honesty and shows you understand the boundaries and context of your research. You might discuss things like sample size issues, specific methodology constraints, or limits on the generalizability of your findings.
Being realistic.
Being realistic and transparent. Fourth, depending on the field and the study, You might make suggestions for practical applications of your knowledge. How can this research actually be used in the real world? This is where the so what becomes tangible and potentially impactful beyond academia. If you study the impact of, say, a new public health policy, what are the actionable recommendations for policymakers based on your findings?
Connecting it outward.
Connecting it outwards. And finally, a very important part of Move 3 is to call for further research. You identify new questions that have arisen from your findings. What are the next logical steps? This is crucial for demonstrating forward thinking and contributing to the ongoing scientific dialogue. Perhaps like that street crossing study example mentioned in the source, which asks, an interesting question is whether the results would have been different if the children had been asked open-ended questions. See? It opens up new avenues for future work, showing your study isn't the final word, but rather a step in a much larger research journey.
Okay, that Move 3 is packed. Interpreting, comparing, explaining the unexpected, acknowledging limits, suggesting applications, calling for more research. It really covers a lot of ground.
It's the analytical engine of the paper, really.
So after all that, what about the final move, Move 4? Stating limitations and future research. You mentioned acknowledging limitations already in Move 3. Is this distinct? And why does it often get its own sort of dedicated space, usually towards the end of the discussion?
Yes, that's a good clarifying question. While Move 3 might discuss specific limitations as part of interpreting particular findings, this result might be limited by X. Move 4 often serves as a more consolidated, concluding statement within the discussion. It's where you might explicitly group together the key limitations and the main suggestions for future work.
Ah, like a summary of those points.
Kind of a summary, or at least a dedicated section to ensure they're clearly articulated. Sometimes journals even require a specific limitations subsection. And interestingly, the language used here to state limitations might be slightly less negative or hedged than when you were identifying gaps in other people's work back in the introductions Move 2. Because now you're discussing the constraints of your own study.
Okay.
You might see phrases like, despite some limitations, such as, or one potential drawback was, or further investigation is needed to address. For future research, you'd use clear, positive framing like, future research should focus on, or an important next step is to, or these findings open up avenues for exploring.
Got it.
This final move is really crucial because it reinforces that intellectual honesty we talked about. It gives a clear-eyed view of your work's boundaries, prevents you from overclaiming, and provides a constructive vision for where the research community could go next. All of this really strengthens your academic credibility. It shows you're a careful, thoughtful scholar, not someone trying to pull the wool over the reader's eyes.
Okay, fantastic. We've journeyed through the introduction, CARS model, and the discussion, those 4 moves, the real heavy hitters of framing the research. Now, let's talk about something that physically comes first in the paper, but you mentioned is often written last. The title.
Ah, yes, the title seems so small, but so important.
It seems like such a tiny thing, maybe just a label, but it's the absolute first impression, isn't it? It's kind of like the street address and the curb appeal of our academic house. It's how anyone finds it and decides whether to even slow down.
It absolutely is paramount. You're spot on. Titles are literally how your paper will be known, how it will be listed, how it will be found. And in today's incredibly crowded academic landscape, a strong, effective title is just crucial for attracting readers in the first place.
It's like the headline.
It is the headline. Think of it as your paper's first, and sometimes, frankly, its only chance to make an impact on a potential reader scrolling through search results or a table of contents.
Wow. No pressure then.
Right. And while they appear right there at the top of page 1, authors often spend a lot of thought and sometimes debate on them. And yes, they frequently write them, or at least finalize them, as the very last step, only after the paper's core content and message have fully crystallized.
Why wait till the end?
Because a truly effective title needs to accurately encapsulate the entire work, the topic, maybe the key finding, the methodology, the scope, and you can only really do that definitively once the work itself is complete and you know exactly what the core message is.
That makes sense. So what makes a title effective? Is it just about being clever or catchy, like a newspaper headline? Or are there deeper mechanics at play, especially thinking about discoverability and, online databases and search engines?
It's definitely more than just catchy, although catchy doesn't hurt if it's also accurate. An effective academic title needs to be, first and foremost, informative. It has to clearly convey the actual content of the paper. It should also ideally be concise, often short, but not so short that it becomes vague or loses critical information. And absolutely crucially in the digital age, it must include relevant keywords.
SEO for academics.
Basically, yes, SEO for academics. Remember, people overwhelmingly search for papers using keywords related to their topic. If your most important keywords aren't in your title, your paper might simply be invisible to the people who need to find it.
Okay. Can you give some examples of effective titles from the source material?
Sure. The source provides some great ones that illustrate different approaches. There's Does self-citation pay? That a question format. It's intriguing, common in some social sciences, because it directly frames the inquiry the paper addresses.
Hooks you in.
It does. Then there's something very direct, like fog water collection in arid coastal locations. Super informative, tells you exactly what the paper is about the topic and the context. No ambiguity.
Very clear.
Another type highlights a key finding, like the increasing dominance of teams in production of knowledge. This title immediately signals an important insight or trend that the paper discusses.
Gives you the takeaway up front.
Exactly. And another common type, especially in health fields, indicates a problem, like caffeinated energy drinks a growing problem. This immediately alerts the reader to the paper's critical stance and the issue it addresses.
So the field or discipline can also influence the style of the title. It's not strictly one size fits all.
Definitely not one size fits all. As you notice with those examples, questions might be more common in social sciences, humanities, or maybe educational research, where the process of inquiry itself is often part of the argument. Engineering or physical science titles, on the other hand, tend to be more direct statements, often focusing on specific methods, materials, or quantitative findings. Understanding these subtle disciplinary variations helps you craft a title that is not only effective in general, but also feels appropriate and recognizable within the norms of your specific field. It signals to other experts that you speak their language.
Okay. And then right below that all-important title, we usually find the abstract. This is like the paper in miniature, right? Kind of the real estate listing description for our academic house gives you all the key features and the price point in one quick glance.
Precisely. That's a perfect analogy. An abstract is a concise summary of the entire paper. Its main purpose is to allow readers, busy researchers, students, practitioners, to quickly grasp the essence of your work and, crucially, to decide if they want to invest their valuable time in reading the full text.
The go-no-go decision point.
Absolutely. In many ways, it's the paper's elevator pitch. You have a very short window, usually just a paragraph or maybe 150, 300 words, to convey everything critical. The background, the aim, the methods, the key results, and the main conclusion or implication.
That's a lot to pack in.
It is. And in today's information-overloaded environment, many readers, maybe even most for some papers, won't go beyond the abstract unless it truly captures their interest and clearly demonstrates relevance to their own work or questions.
So are there different kinds of abstracts, or is it generally one standardized format we should expect?
There are variations. The source mentions two main types that are pretty common. First, you have structured abstracts. These are very common in fields like medicine, nursing, public health, and some social sciences. They use explicit subheadings like background, aim, method, results, conclusion.
Oh, right. I've seen those. Very organized.
Very organized, and they make it incredibly easy for readers to scan quickly and find the specific piece of information they're looking for. You can jump right to the method or the results if that's what you need. Very. The other main type is the unstructured abstract. This is just a single paragraph summary without those explicit subheadings. It's more common in many humanities disciplines, some physical sciences, and engineering fields. But even though the format looks different, both types absolutely must fulfill that same core function, summarizing the entire paper concisely and accurately.
Okay. And what about tense usage within abstracts? Does it follow the same patterns we discussed for the full paper sections, or does it have its own unique rhythm because it's so condensed?
It's a bit of a strategic dance, actually, and it can be slightly different from the main text patterns. One thing is pretty consistent. Conclusions in an abstract are almost always stated in the present tense. They emphasize the current implications or significance of the work. This suggests, or our findings confirm, or this provides evidence for.
Okay, present tense for the takeaway.
Right. The opening statements, setting the background or context, often use the present or present perfect tense. X is a major problem, or research has shown. Where it gets more varied is in describing the results and methods. While these are often reported in the past tense, reflecting the completed actions of the study, we conducted, results showed, using the present tense is also quite common, especially in physical sciences like physics, chemistry, astrophysics. You might see our investigations suggest, or this paper demonstrates, even when talking about results.
Why the present tense there?
Sometimes it's used to emphasize the ongoing relevance or the perceived factual nature of the findings, almost presenting them as established truths rather than just past observations. It can sometimes signal a more, let's say, personal stance or a stronger claim by the authors about the immediate significance of their work.
Interesting nuance. Can you maybe walk us through an example abstract like that self-citation one and point out the parts and maybe highlight a common mistake writers make that would cause a reader like me to just hit back and skip reading the full paper?
Absolutely. Let's break down the abstract from the Does Self-Citation Pay paper mentioned in the source. It starts by identifying the problem or background. Self-citations, those where authors cite their own works, account for a significant portion of all citations. Boom. Context established. Relevant background.
Okay.
Then it moves clearly to the aim or method. In this article, we examine the incentives that underlie citation by studying how authors' references to their own works affect the citations they receive from others. Okay, now I know exactly what the study did and why.
Method clear.
Method clear. Then it states the key findings, often concisely. We report the results of a macro study of more than 500,000 citations to articles by Norwegian scientists. Gives a sense of the scope, large study, and hints at the core result without getting bogged down in statistical detail.
Just the headline result.
Just the headline result. And finally, it wraps up with the implications or conclusions, nearly always in that present tense. We find that self-citations have a small positive effect on the number of citations received from others. Our results imply that self-citation may not be as problematic as sometimes assumed. This clearly states the so what, the main takeaway message of the paper.
Background, method, results, conclusion, all there.
All there, concisely. Now, a very common mistake writers make. It's often providing way too much background information, getting lost in the weeds of methodology, or, even worse, being really vague about the actual results or failing to state a clear conclusion or implication.
Burying the lead or leaving it out entirely.
Exactly. If your abstract doesn't give me the main findings and clearly state their significance or implications, why would I, as a busy reader, invest the time to dig through the full paper hoping to find them? It's like that house listing again. If it only describes the neighborhood and the foundation but doesn't mention how many bedrooms it has or if it has that great view you're looking for.
You move on to the next listing.
You move on. You need the full picture, just in miniature, right there in the abstract.
So really understanding these abstract conventions helps you, the listener, quickly assess if a paper is truly relevant to your needs, saves you a ton of time. And for your own writing, it guides you in crafting those powerful miniature summaries that effectively represent your hard work and actually grab a reader's attention.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Now, for a section that, let's be honest, is probably often skimmed or maybe even completely overlooked by many readers, but is actually quite significant, especially for the author and the academic community, the acknowledgments section.
Yes, often tucked away at the end, but it carries weight.
It's usually just a short paragraph or two right near the end, but it plays a really important role in the ecosystem of academic publishing, doesn't it? It's kind of like the formal thank you note after you've hosted a great party in your new academic house.
That's a lovely way to think about it. And it does serve important functions in subtle but powerful ways. It's a section that reveals quite a lot about the collaborative nature of academic work and the community supporting it.
So what's its main purpose?
Well, the primary purpose of the acknowledgments section is first, to demonstrate that you, the author, are part of a larger academic community and that your work has benefited from its support. It acknowledges interdependence. Second, it's an opportunity to formally repay your debts, as the source puts it, by thanking specific individuals, institutions, or crucial funding bodies who contributed in some way to the research.
Giving credit.
Giving credit where it's due. And third, at the same time, it serves a really crucial function of establishing intellectual responsibility. By thanking others for their help, you also implicitly, and sometimes explicitly, clarify that any opinions expressed, or especially any errors that might remain in the paper, are solely your own.
The disclaimer part.
Exactly. It's a formal declaration of both gratitude and accountability. Integrity is key here.
So what are the common elements we typically expect to see in an acknowledgments section? Is it just a list of names, or is there more structure to it?
There's usually a structure, and our source identifies 3 key elements, often presented in a fairly standard order. First, and often given top billing, is acknowledging financial support.
The money.
The money. This is typically the very first thing mentioned. It includes acknowledging grants, contracts, scholarships, or institutional funding that made the research possible. You'll see precise language like, "This research was funded by a grant from sponsor name, grant number, grant ID." This isn't just politeness, it's often a contractual requirement from the funding agency.
Okay, gotta thank the funders first. What's next?
Second, come the thanks to people or groups. This is where you express gratitude to colleagues, mentors, supervisors, students, technicians, or collaborators for their specific help, encouragement, or contributions.
What kind of contributions?
It could be anything from insightful discussions about the ideas, feedback on earlier drafts, help with statistical analysis, providing access to specialized equipment or data sets, technical assistance, or even just crucial moral support during the research process. You might see phrases like, "We would like to thank Dr. Jane Doe for her insightful comments on an earlier draft," or "We are grateful to John Smith for assistance with data collection." These acknowledgments really help build and reinforce academic networks. They signal who you've collaborated with and who supports your work.
Builds community ties.
It really does. And third, critically important are the disclaimers. We touched on this. These statements explicitly clarify that the opinions expressed or any remaining errors in the paper are solely the responsibility of the author. They don't necessarily reflect the views of the sponsors or the people you just thanked.
Covering your bases and theirs.
Exactly. You'll see phrases like, "However, the opinions expressed herein do not necessarily reflect the policy of sponsor," or sometimes a simple, "Any errors remain our own." This is a crucial ethical and professional safeguard. It protects those who helped you from being held accountable for your specific interpretations or any mistakes you might have made.
Okay, funders, people, disclaimers. Got it. What about the stance and voice used in this section? Is it always super formal, third person, like the author's wish to thank? I feel like I recall reading one acknowledgement years ago where the author thanked their cat for moral support during late-night writing sessions.
Ah, that's wonderful.
Well, maybe that's not strictly an academic writing for graduate students. It does kind of speak to the human journey behind the polished final paper, doesn't it?
It really does, and that's a great example of how these sections, despite their generally formal function, can sometimes reveal a touch of genuine personality. The source actually recommends that acknowledgments, assuming the journal guidelines permit it, should preferably be written in the first person.
Oh, really? I or we?
Yes, using I for a single author, or we for co-authors. While you might occasionally still see older, more formal phrasing, like the present authors wish to acknowledge. The first-person voice, I thank or we thank, is generally considered more appropriate and less overly formal for this specific section. Why? Because it's a direct expression of gratitude from the author. It feels a bit more authentic.
Adds a human touch.
It is human touch, exactly. The general ordering, as we said, tends to be financial support first, then the thanks to people groups, and then typically the disclaimers at the end. And yes, while thanking your cat might not be standard academic practice.
Probably not peer-reviewed support.
Probably not. But that kind of personal touch, when used very judiciously and appropriately, can actually help humanize the often rigorous and seemingly impersonal world of research. It subtly reminds us that behind every single published paper, there's a human being or a team of human beings with all their struggles, their breakthroughs, supported by a whole network of people, and sometimes, yes, maybe even pets.
So even though it might seem like a small, almost boilerplate section at the very end, the acknowledgement section is actually a powerful signal. It signals academic integrity, it shows community engagement, and sometimes it even offers a little glimpse of personality. It really reinforces that you're not just a lone researcher working in isolation, but part of a larger network of support, collaboration, and also accountability, extending maybe beyond just the purely intellectual realm.
Well said. It's an important piece of the academic puzzle. Hashtag, tag, outro.
Deep divers. We have certainly covered a lot of ground today. We've navigated the complex, yet, as we've seen, highly structured world of constructing academic research papers. We started by learning how to build a compelling introduction, using that strategic CARS model, establishing territory, finding a niche, occupying it.
Then we move through the really critical landscape of dissecting discussion sections, consolidating, reporting, commenting, and acknowledging limitations.
We honed in on perfecting those crucial first impressions, the titles and abstracts, making sure they're informative, concise, and discoverable.
And finally, we recognized the vital role of acknowledging your academic village, giving credit where it's due in the acknowledgement section, while also taking responsibility.
we've seen how each section really, from the broad strokes of establishing that territory right down to the precise language used for highlighting limitations or hedging a claim, plays a specific rhetorical role. It's not random.
Not at all. Those subtle shifts in tense we talked about, the strategic use of passive voice in methods, the careful deployment of hedges in discussion, even the choice of reporting verbs like suggests versus demonstrates. These are not just arbitrary rules. They are deliberate choices made by authors to enhance clarity, build credibility, and ultimately increase the impact of their work.
And that's where it gets really interesting and powerful for everyone listening. The elements we've discussed today, that precise language, the strategic organization, those subtle signals of authority or caution, they aren't just rules for academics to follow when they're writing a paper.
Right.
They are powerful tools that empower you, the reader, the user of information, to decode academic work much more effectively. It helps you understand the author's intent, gauge the strength of their claims, and extract the truly valuable insights with much greater clarity and impact. It's like learning the secret language of academic discourse.
And hopefully, as you encounter academic writing from now on, whether you're reading a journal article for your own research, prepping for a critical meeting where data is presented, or maybe even drafting your own research brief or report perhaps you'll now read, and maybe even write, with a new lens.
Yeah, seeing the matrix behind it all.
Exactly. You'll start spotting these deliberate choices, the moves, the signals, the tense shifts. You'll appreciate the meticulous craft that goes into constructing knowledge, and you'll understand the why behind the what much more deeply. This deeper understanding, well, it allows you to decode information with greater speed, greater accuracy, transforming you into a truly well-informed individual, a savvy consumer of research.
So, here's a final thought to leave you with. What will be your next step in applying this deeper understanding? How might you use this knowledge of academic structure and rhetoric in your own reading, your own analysis, or perhaps even your
Được
own
thành lập
writing?
2018 bởi nhóm giáo viên đã có nhiều năm công tác tại các trung tâm lớn uy tín ở thành phố Hồ Chí Minh. IELTS FOCUS không chỉ có các bạn học viên giỏi là các bạn tiến sĩ, bác sĩ, nghiên cứu sinh, các bạn học trường chuyên, mà còn có các bạn học sinh lớp thường đạt được điểm số IELTS và TOEIC cao nhờ vào phát triển được năng lực tiếng Anh thực thụ. Khác biệt với các trung tâm lớn, đông đúc, dùng chung một quyển giáo trình rập khuôn cho hàng ngàn học viên, lúc đi thi gây nhàm chán cho giám khảo chấm điểm. Đa số các chương trình online hay học trực tiếp tại thành phố Hồ Chí Minh của IELTS FOCUS chỉ tầm 3 đến 7 học viên, dễ dàng theo sát các bạn, giúp tối đa hóa điểm số nhờ tích hợp nhiều phương pháp trong suốt quá trình giảng dạy. 100% lớp học luyện đề được hướng dẫn bởi thầy Quốc Khánh, IELTS 8.5, Reading 9.0, Listening 9.0 và không có band điểm nào dưới 8. Các bạn có thể theo học tại quận 6, quận 2, quận 9 và quận 11. Nếu các bạn ở xa, có thể chọn hình thức học online, giáo viên vẫn có thể theo sát được các bạn vì sĩ số lớp vừa phải.
Waves rolling in so slow. Trust the tide.